So we spoke to Farmer first, and he said it was attacked yesterday. And we asked him who did that. Well, he alleged that he can't say exactly, but he believes that's opposition. And after we spoke to Miri as well. Miri took off his card, his card brother, and told us he was shot in the head yesterday night. And he said it was the APC that was responsible for that. And it's the same polling units there.
So both of you mean Famurewa, the candidate of the APC for East Senatorial District, and Sonia Omiri, the candidate of the PDP for Ijesha South Federal Constituency, voted in the same polling unit.
In the same polling unit, yeah.
And they both alleged that they were attacked yesterday.
Yeah, both of them said they were attacked.
Interesting. Okay, so other places that you went to, what's the situation like there?
The other places we went to, I'm going to be playing here. One thing we noticed, just like we reported earlier about vote buying, where you have to vote, go to one corner, write your name down on a plain sheet of paper, was the same thing that was witnessed to a large extent in Ife and to an extent in Elisha as well. But then talked about INEC officials, they were on ground, security operatives were also on ground. In terms of the turnout, it was terribly poor. Because we spoke to some of the INEC officials, they were expecting, say, 300 persons, but what they got was less than 60.
All right. Thank you so much, Joseph. We wait to get more reports from your end.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much. Joseph Atewe there. I mean, a peculiar situation of a particular polling unit, that's in as Mr. Valola, the senatorial candidate, it never crossed my mind that they're from the same area.
I know.
And then so they voted, but now both of them are alleging attack against each other. He said one even had to open his cap and see he said he was shot in the head.
There has been a political uproar in the East, in Elisha East, or let me say,
Atakumosa East.
Side. I read it in the National Tribune about 2 or 3 days ago. But unfortunately, when Famurewa was talking the other time, he never mentioned such a thing, that he was attacked perhaps yesterday or day before yesterday, unlike Omiri, who said he's being shot.
Joseph said Famurewa also told them that he was attacked.
Okay, maybe when he was talking to us at that time, we couldn't hear that. But unfortunately, we wouldn't want such a thing again in our political firmament. On the issue of Imo State, there has been a very peculiar issue in Imo. And what is that? Number 4 has been given opportunity to become number 1 now. I never knew how they are going to have peace in that state. People believe that the judgment of that time was bought. And look at what Supreme Court said. They said they will never rely on such a document or such a judgment again. That as far as they are concerned, they have tore that part of the judgment from their political history. So for number 1 to become number 1, there will be a civil unrest until what is supposed to be done.
But Imo is part of the southwest region.
But I'm telling you that
security challenges is not limited to Imo alone.
I understand you. What is happening?
We read a report of 2 people beheaded.
I got you. What is happening in Anambra State is quite different from what is going to happen in Enugu State. I was telling an individual on the platform like this that when it comes to Anambra election, 3 things will dictate where you are going to vote. Number 1, you must be from Roman Catholic if you want to become governor. They said it in the church that except you are from Roman Catholic, tell Andy who buys from Anglican church, he can never become governor. I heard it, sir. Number 2, you must be an Abga individual. Failure to be an Abga is equal to 0. I think there is another factor, which is number 3. So if you are looking for a way to become governor in Anambra State, you must move within that axis. Anambra State, you must move within that axis. So for Imo State, it has been a peaceful state before until number 4 becomes number 1. And as long as they address that situation, they may likely be having pockets of violence.
All right. Dr. I'm like
just to come in here. See, issue of Supreme Court judgment that made Pope Uzodimma governor of Anambra, of Imo State, was a judicial decision. It was not an electoral decision.
Exactly.
And we are bound by it. Have we had that in history before? Of course, 1979. Awolowo against Shehu Shagari. The Supreme Court also came and said, see, the 2/3 of 19 was 12 and 1/3 of the third. I mean, that was against all mathematical rules.
Yeah.
Chike Obi was called,
Yeah.
Obi lawyer was called to come and do the analysis. And the Supreme Court said, yes, we are taking this issue because the interpretation of the 2/3 of 19 cannot be mathematical, but legal. But that this judgment we were entering today should not be used as a stare decisis, as a precedent to any other. This is not the first time the Supreme Court is taking that decision. But we should be careful not to the way we criticize our Supreme Court. When it does not favor you, you should not raise any, because a time will come that it will also unfairly favor you. For example, in Rivers State, was Amechi even part of the ballot?
At all.
It was not.
At all.
But the Supreme Court said it was the one that won the governorship of Rivers State.
And they said they will never refer to it
against Celestine Omea.
Yeah.
And remove Celestine Omea, who was on the ballot. If you were number 4, and if you were number 0, you were not even part of the ballot, you became governor. What stopped a number 4 from becoming governor? It's the same Supreme Court. So it is not a matter of number 4 or number 1 or number 0. It's a kind of a judicial interpretation of our laws at that time. Fairness and the issue that has to do with the morality of issues dealing with election is not part of our system. It is the law. And law and morality are not the same.
Mr. Ademiloye.
Yeah, honestly, I think we are getting into very dangerous waters here. If you say, no. Actually, maybe it's because I'm obsessed with fascism and tyranny. But if you say in any democracy that you can no longer criticize the judgment of the Supreme Court, then you are going into a very dangerous water. If you look at the barrage of attacks on the American Supreme Court since the repudiation of Roe versus Wade, then you know that that is the way a democracy is supposed to. 1954, after the landmark, and it was landmark in every sense of the word, decision, Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas, we desegregated the schools. You must know, if you fact check, that it became so bad, the threats of assassination, that the FBI had to attach plainclothes men to escort the children of members of the Supreme Court to school, to the equivalent of primary and secondary schools in the United States, 1954. So if we now say, because there's a dangerous trend now, I find it odd that the Supreme Court of any democracy can issue a warning statement that people should start criticizing. And then secondly, quickly, because these are fundamental issues, it is dodgy to me that the final court in any country can come out and say, like they did in 1979, that this must not be cited as a precedent. Frankly, I find it, I'm a layman, I'm not a lawyer like Dr. Ogunyemi, but as a Democrat, I think it's a very dangerous precedent because the Supreme Court is the final court. You can't go beyond the Supreme Court unless you go to
so maybe we should ask Dr. Ogunyemi, I mean, is that grounded in fact that the Supreme Court said that particular case should not be cited going forward?
Exactly, yes.
Of course.
It's dangerous.
1979.
Yes, not only 79, even that of Umia.
Okay, I'm not so sure of that of Hope Uzodimma.
Okay.
That of 1979 is a locus classicus. And in the law school, anywhere you go, Shagari against Awolowo against Shagari is always a case study. It was not limited to that. In 1981, Bender State too sued the federal government and took it to court in respect of revenue allocation. How did the Supreme Court rule? The Supreme Court ruled against the government of the federation by saying you do not have a right to determine what revenue will go to a particular state with respect to the processes of passing it. Not that the National Assembly did not pass the law, but that when after having done your committee work, it should come to plenary before you can pass and say this is the law. But Shagari government and the MPN government there, immediately the committee in charge of finance passed it, it just endorsed and said that was the law. Now,
it never came to plenary.
For legitimation. And the vendor said, because the state was in UPN then, Unity Party of Nigeria, and was a minority, and will always lose in the National Assembly anyway, even if it had come to the plenary. But on the technical ground that it did not come to plenary, Ambrose Folorunshali, then governor, took the federal government to court and the government said that revenue allocation should never stand. The same thing is repeated. It was repeated in 2002 when Ajibola Ige was the Attorney General of the Federation. Now, the Attorney General of the Federation sued the Attorney General of Abia State and 35 states and 35 others on grounds that the determination of a particular watermark of Nigerian state, because the governors of the littoral state, the coastal state says, our territory extended to as far as the Nigerian exclusive economic zone. The government said, no, your territory is only land. Once you step your feet into the water,
nautical miles,
it's not my territory. And the states argue that even that water has land under it, and that the land of a state is an extension. And now, the states of the region defeated the federal government hands down, but brought a caveat to say that Abuja, which will have been getting 1% of regional account, should never get that percentage again. That Abuja is not the same mate as the states. When it comes
it's
to
not
sharing.
equal to the 36 states.
But that because Abuja is not a state, and Section 162 of Section 4 says Abuja does not say Abuja should share in the federation account, but that the federal government can from its own consolidated revenue fund give to Abuja any amount. This way.
So you're saying there will always be judicial pronouncements that are not popular.
Exactly, not popular, but it's good for our jurisprudence. They may not be popular today, but it is solid law.
I don't know. I mean, we're able to drag this on. I'm sure Mr. Dimle will not agree that. I mean, the Opus Odima case,
exactly.
and some of the other ones, maybe the Machina case against that one.
Sorry.
You know, but isn't that too much intrusion of the judiciary in our electoral processes?
Exactly.
So, well, it is your final court. You say Section 6 of Section C says that all matters under the heaven and the earth within Nigeria should be determined by the courts. They put only one exception.
Okay.
He says anything dealing with Chapter 2, the judiciary should not interfere.
What is in Chapter 2?
Chapter 2 is the fundamental objective and directive principles of state policy, which, for example, says, that the primary purpose of government shall be the security and welfare of the people. But that if the government fails to ensure your security and your welfare, you can't challenge it.
So, okay, that's what you lawyers say. It's not justiciable.
It's not justiciable.
So that means I can't sue government for not taking proper care of me.
Yeah, so you sue government for not implementing budget. You can't do that.
All right, Mr. Ademiloye, because we need to go on a break.
Yeah,
I know that this is
I know you need to go
a very touchy one.
There are issues that bother me, actually. The first one is the tendency for the Supreme Court to now start looking like an all-purpose vehicle.
Yeah.
Is the procedure, because I can't...
An all-purpose or a special purpose?
No, an all-purpose vehicle.
Okay.
Because one, the Supreme Court can now impose a government, because for me, it's imposition. Somebody comes forth and then becomes governor. Now, we are voting today across this country. My children voted, my wife voted, so did your wife. Now, how do we know that at the end of the day, it is not the person, there are 18 candidates. It is not the person who came 14th who's going to be sworn in on the main president. How do you know? Are you clairvoyant?
Yes.
Then secondly, I've always thought, and I thought about this right from about 1978, when I just finished doing youth corps, you know. I remember we had a wild debate in the youth corps camp just before the I've always thought that, you know, this country, the whole structure the military induced is bad, you know. This country should have a constitutional court.
Yeah.
Because right now,
Supreme Court.
Yeah, look at the way the constitutional court, the speed, the intellectual depth of constitutional courts in Republic of South Africa, in Kenya, in France, so that the Supreme Court is not overburdened. Because the constitutional courts deal with really naughty constitutional issues. Now, we have the way the Supreme Court of Nigeria is going now, right? The Supreme Court is not just selecting governors. Because the person who might win this presidential election might be number 14.
Exactly.
The Supreme Court is now dangerously also taking over the position of the monetary authority of Nigeria.
But so can you blame the Supreme Court if citizens are taking those cases to the Supreme Court?
That's what I'm saying.
Citing instances, asking Supreme Court to interpret the law.
Angry if I say I blame the Supreme Court. No, I'm correctly, correctly, you know, so.
Yes.
I'm not saying it's because of esprit de corps. No, he's a very honorable person. What I'm saying is this, right?
No problem, sir.
When you have a problem, you solve it. And I believe that there is nobody, including the good doctor here, who will not now suggest that there is a fundamental structural flaw. And we have to look at the whole issue of the Supreme Court. whether we should have a constitutional court or whether we should even have like sub-Supreme Courts in 6 geopolitical zones. But you cannot have an all-purpose Supreme Court taking over monetary policy, taking over electoral function. Like I said, you yourself know that if in a few weeks' time, the person who came number 14 on this ballot, whose name you don't know today, if they swear him in on May 29, are you really going to tell me that you will faint? You won't.
Now, when we are talking, we have cited the case of Awolowo, that Supreme Court said they could never use that law for any adjudication anymore or as a precedent. The same thing, Amechi case. The same thing, Hope Isodima. In fact, this Isodima issue led to a serious argument on a platform like this, about 3 or 4, where I was in Lagos at that time. That okay, if you have adjudicated on a matter and you say you cannot rely on that thing as a precedent, what did you give us? And again, let me dwell on the virtue of what this man said. Afe Babala, he said today, majority of Nigerian judges are billionaires. I don't know what it meant by that.
Okay, so I mean, just before we go on a break, because you're due for a break.
You're either paying dues or going on break.
Okay, let's take Collins. Collins will be joining us from Onitsha. I hope the line is clear now. Collins Anyonu will be joining us from Fege in Onitsha. Thank you so much for joining us, Collins. Hello, Collins. Collins, can you hear me? Okay, it seems. Okay, so it seems the line's still not clear to hear.
Go on the break.
Yes, please do.
Because he's a resource person. I hope he's not going to issue here.
No, at all.
I want to ask you, Dr. Ogwemi, I'm sorry, I want to learn. That don't you think the proposition of having a constitutional court might help us in it, that it has now become inevitable? I want to tap your brain.
All right.
So it's still, if you have a constitutional court, that would be another level of court which the National Assembly can create. But it will be a court created by law, that is by statute, not by the Constitution. The Constitution is superior. However, jurisdiction, original jurisdiction of the Supreme Court on issues of dispute. Once there is a dispute in any liberal democracy, there must be an arbiter to adjudicate. And the Supreme Court does not have omnibus jurisdiction to hear everything. For example, the Supreme Court, if you sue someone for taking your land, it's not the Supreme Court, you go to your High Court. But the Supreme Court, when it comes to a dispute between the nation, the federation, and that is the federal government, not the federation, the federal government and the state, it is the Supreme Court that has original jurisdiction. There's nothing you can do about it.
Well, my producer is saying we need to go. I mean, they say we need to go for a break now. When we come back, we should be back by the half-hour mark, and so we'll be able to by 4:30 we should return. By that time, our analysts would have also rested and then perhaps take lunch. For us to return and then begin to take reports from other places as well. Thank you so much for staying with us here. It's been a very, very interesting panel here. Intellectuals helping us to have an understanding of issues all over and interrogating some of the developments from across the countries. The Wstv-Rave 91.7 FM Mandate 2023 polls have closed in most part of the country, but in some other places where is extended, some people are still on the queue, still voting also. And like we got some other reports the other time, we also had the counting going on in many places, and results are even flying around now. Results are coming in from different places. It's really at the polling unit and is going to the different collation centers. I'll be bringing updates here. But as I'm on duty, we can't announce results. The only person allowed to announce results is the electoral officer, and we'll be getting all of these reports. Just stay with us right here on Rave FM and also on WSTV. We'll be back.